G'day everyone. You know, I get a lot of satisfaction nurturing healthy carnivorous plants and watching them grow and look their best. But what about those carnivorous plants that aren't quite growing as well as you thought they would be? Maybe you've just bought a new carnivorous plant only to discover that the new plant that you just bought is struggling to acclimatise to your local growing conditions. Well, in this video, I'm going to be sharing a few expert care tips to help you increase your chances of reviving a struggling carnivorous plant. My name is Jerry from Succulent Flytraps. Okay, so this is the struggling plant that I was referring to earlier. This is a Drosera capensis. It's a South African Sundew, and the form, let's have a look at the tag, is a red form. So the leaves are actually red. It doesn't look red at the moment. I'm not sure why. Maybe because the plant has sent out these young shoots. Now this plant here was part of a larger order of other varieties of South African Sundews, including this one over here. Now they were bought around about 4 months ago as bare rooted rhizomes, just the stems. And you can see here how this one has really, it's really flourished. You can see the multiple flower stalks or multiple flowers that they've seeded. And you can see a developing one right here. So that's what that one looks like. And in comparison, or in contrast, you can see here how this one is so small. Now, not long after I brought this plant over here, I gave them the same growing conditions. They were both in a tray of water, just like this one over here. I gave them the same amount of sun, same peat moss, and yet this one struggled. It got to the point where all that was left was just these brown leaves and a brown rhizome, brown stem, and it had no green leaves coming out at all. So as you can imagine, I was getting quite anxious. Here I just bought a brand new lot of carnivorous plants, Drosera capensis, and I was growing them, and there was one there that wasn't quite growing as well as I thought. So I had to do something drastic. So what did I do? I decided to change or vary the growing conditions. I know that carnivorous plants really appreciate humidity. After all, a lot of them grow in boggy environments where there is a lot of wet soil, and that creates a lot of humidity. So I decided to create humidity by putting this, just a resealable bag that you get for your kitchen bags. And I just cut the bottom out and I just placed that over the top of the pot, just as you can see right here. And soon after I did that, I knew that there was humidity in there because you could see the condensation of water on the inside of the bag. And also when I put my finger in there, you could really feel that, that little warmer, moist environment. So yeah, that's the first thing I decided to do. So the next thing I decided to vary was the intensity of light that this plant was receiving, this struggling carnivorous plant. Now back 4 months ago, I put all my South African Sundews out in the open sun. They were getting around about 7 hours of direct sunlight every day. Now, most of them survived, as I said, as you can see right here, but this one didn't. Back in those days, back about 4 months ago, we were pretty much just getting blue skies and the temperatures were quite warm. So not only was there intense light, but there was also hot temperatures. So I thought, well, maybe this struggling plant was struggling to adapt to those hot, bright conditions. So to get around that, what I did is I decided to use this 50% shade cloth. Now, as the name implies, it provides 50% light and 50% shade. So pretty much it just breaks up that light, so it's not so intense. So what I didn't actually use this arrangement, but you can do this if you want to. You just simply place that mesh over the plant. The rim of that bag supports the mesh so it doesn't damage the plant in any way. So you just simply place it over the plant. You tuck in the edges of that shade cloth under the water tray, and you have a very effective, neat arrangement. And not only will it provide that nice humidity for that plant, but it will also break up that light so it's not so intense. So the next thing I decided to vary was the watering. Now what I could have done, I could have simply left that pot in a tray of water, that's fine. The only thing is about when you're leaving a tray of water, you've got to make sure that that water level is nice and constant. There are always going to be times when you're not home and the water evaporates, so you have to keep topping that water up, unless you're pretty much home every day and it's always constant. So what I decided to do, rather than having a tray method, I decided to put a wick in the bottom of the pot, just as you can see right here. Now I actually love this method because it more or less keeps a constant damp environment for your plant. The wick just soaks up that water nicely from the bottom. You can see here the water's in this plastic bag. I've started using this arrangement and my plants have really responded very, very well. Not only this plant, but a lot of the other plants that I've experimented with. And another good thing about it is that you don't have to keep watering it up so much. You get less evaporation because that water's enclosed in the bag, and simply whenever that plant needs water, it just soaks up that water through the wick and that plant is nice and happy. So what I did was I just used another resealable plastic bag, and then what I did is I placed that whole pot into these special vertical compartments. Now I actually love using these particular foam boxes. The reason is because they can vertically position your pot, and it's ideal for this arrangement. You just simply put the pot into one of these holes, and that positions that pot above the water, which then soaks up the water through the wick. Now, not only does it position that pot vertically, it also keeps the pot nice and cool. Now, we were getting some really, really hot days. It's a fact of climate change that our summers are getting hotter, days are getting warmer. So this arrangement really does help. And I've noticed that with a lot of my other plants, if you can keep that water nice and cool, that will keep the peat moss nice and cool, which keeps the roots nice and happy, which keeps the whole plant nice and happy. So if you can try to sort of understand that, you'll go a long way to grow healthy plants. So once I place the pot into these foam compartments, to provide that shade, again, I used a shade cloth. And what I really love about these foam boxes is they're so versatile. It's just a really easy process. Just get your shade cloth. I just use the end of this bamboo skewer, and I've just inserted that into a plastic wall lug. And you just pierce it into the foam box. And I've placed one on the other side just to secure that mesh. And it's a very, very simple arrangement, but it works really, really well. So what did I learn out of my experience? Well, it helps and it's important to regularly observe your carnivorous plants. That's particularly so when you've just bought new plants. The reason is because that new plant that you've just bought then has to acclimatise to your local growing conditions. Now, I'm assuming here that you're growing your carnivorous plants outside. Now, if your plant is showing signs that it's struggling, then try to apply the tips that I've just shown you. Increasing the humidity, try to make that pot nice and cool if you can during those really hot days, and maybe just try to reduce the intensity of that sunlight by using shade cloths. By doing that, you're easing your plant into your new conditions, which will hopefully make your plant respond, just as my sundew did right here. What's important also as well is to know whether your plant is a temperate carnivorous plant. That means that it's going to have to go through a dormancy period during the winter. Now, we're here in late autumn. winter is just around the corner. So eventually I'm going to have to take this resealable bag off. That's going to lower the humidity, but at the same time it's also going to expose the plant to those colder temperatures. Those colder temperatures will then force that plant to go into dormancy mode. Of course, dormancy is important because it makes that plant have a nice good rest before coming up, hopefully, with vibrant new growth in early spring.